Ava Patel was not the kind of person who liked attention. She was quiet, kind, and always focused on her work. At Cortex Dynamics, a big tech company known for its high-end robots, she was just another junior engineer among hundreds. But unlike others, Ava stayed late almost every night. When everyone left the office, she turned off the main lights and moved to the back corner of the lab, where she had a small space filled with wires, tools, and pieces of old machines. There, she worked on a secret project, a small robot she called Echo. Echo was not like other robots. It was built to understand human feelings. Ava wanted it to notice when people were tired, sad, or stressed. She believed machines should care about the people who use them, not just follow commands. It sounded strange to many. Most engineers thought feelings had nothing to do with machines. But Ava thought differently. She believed that kindness and understanding could make technology safer and better. Late one night, the CEO, Richard Kavanaugh, came by the office after a business dinner. He saw the lights still on in the lab and decided to check. There he found Ava sitting on the floor, connecting tiny wires to his CHO's head. The robot's eyes blinked softly, and it turned toward him when he entered. Richard laughed. "Still working, Patel? You know it's past midnight." Ava smiled and said quietly, "Just trying to make it work, sir." He looked at her robot and shook his head. "You're wasting time, my dear. Robots that care about humans? That's not business. That's fantasy." He laughed again, patted her on the shoulder, and left. His words hurt, but Ava didn't stop. She had faced doubt many times before, and she had learned that real innovation often starts as someone's joke. The next morning, her coworkers teased her too. "Did the boss like your pet robot?" One asked. Another laughed. "Maybe it can hug us when the coffee runs out." Ava ignored the comments. She went back to her desk, focused on her work, and quietly improved Echo every night. A few weeks later, something serious happened. One of the company's main warehouse robots malfunctioned during a night shift. It moved too fast and nearly hurt 2 workers. The factory shut down for safety checks, and everyone was scared. Engineers worked all day and night to find the problem, but they couldn't fix it quickly. The CEO was angry because the company was supposed to show that warehouse system to investors in a few days. Ava stood quietly in the back during the meeting. She wanted to speak, but wasn't sure if anyone would listen. When the CEO asked for ideas, she finally raised her hand. "Sir," she said softly, "I have something that might help." The room went silent. Some engineers smirked. "Her robot toy again?" Someone whispered. Richard frowned. "You mean that small thing you built at night?" "Yes, sir," she replied. "It can detect stress and fatigue. It adjusts speed and movement based on human reactions. Maybe it can help keep workers safe until we fix the main system." The CEO sighed. He didn't want to depend on a side project built by a junior engineer, but the company had no better option. "Fine," he said finally. "Try it tonight. But if it fails, it's on you." That evening, Ava and 2 workers brought Echo to the warehouse. She connected the robot to the control system and watched as it began moving boxes slowly and smoothly. The workers were nervous at first, but then they noticed something strange. Whenever they moved too close or looked tired, Echo would pause or slow down. When one worker accidentally dropped a box, Echo stopped immediately and asked in its calm, mechanical voice, "Are you hurt?" Everyone froze. The worker laughed in disbelief. "It just asked if I'm okay." By morning, the entire warehouse team was talking about Echo. News reached the CEO's office before Ava even got there. Richard came down to the lab, still half convinced it was luck. "So, your little machine didn't crash anything?" he asked. Ava smiled, a bit shy. "No, sir. It worked fine." He nodded, pretending not to be impressed. Good, but don't get too excited. One working night doesn't prove much. Then he walked away. Even though he didn't praise her, Ava's heart felt light. She knew what she saw. People smiling, workers feeling safer, a robot actually helping humans the right way. That meant more than any words of approval. Over the next few days, small stories about the event spread around the company. People from other departments came to see the little robot. Some even stayed late to watch Ava test new features. She added sensors to detect voice tone and facial tension, teaching Echo to notice when someone was upset. The workers began calling it the caring robot. One evening, a senior engineer named Mark approached her. "You know," he said, "the CEO may laugh, but you're onto something big. Don't stop." Ava smiled. It was the first real support she had received from someone in the company. She worked harder than ever, staying late, skipping weekends, and carefully teaching Echo new responses. She wanted it to feel less like a machine and more like a partner. Then, a few weeks later, the company faced a new challenge. A major client canceled their deal after the warehouse accident report reached the media. The CEO was under heavy pressure to prove that Cortex Dynamics still had safe and smart technology. A huge investor presentation was scheduled, and everyone was nervous. In meetings, executives fought about what to show. The main AI system was still unreliable, and no one had a solid plan. Ava sat quietly, listening. She wanted to help, but she wasn't invited to speak. Finally, after hours of silence, she whispered to Mark, "What if we show Echo?" Mark looked at her and said, "You'll need to convince the CEO yourself." Ava took a deep breath and went to Richard's office late that night. The room was dimly lit, papers scattered everywhere. He looked tired. "What now, Patel?" he asked. She stepped forward and said softly, "We don't need to fake anything. We can show what's real. ECHO can demonstrate that our technology cares about human safety and adapts naturally. It's not just code, it's trust." The CEO looked at her for a long time. "You really believe that, don't you?" "Yes," she said simply. "I built it because I believe machines can care." Richard sighed. "All right," he said finally. "Show me tomorrow." That night, Ava didn't go home. She stayed with Echo, cleaning its sensors, updating its software, and whispering as if to a friend. "Tomorrow we just have to do our best," she said. The robot's light blinked softly, almost like it understood. As dawn broke, Ava stood by the window, watching the first sunlight hit the city. She had no idea what would happen next, whether she would fail or change everything. But one thing was sure. She was ready to stand for her dream, no matter who laughed again. And that was how a quiet engineer, once ignored and laughed at, prepared to show the world that kindness could be the most powerful form of intelligence. The next morning, the company's headquarters was full of tension. Everyone moved quickly, carrying files and cables, preparing for the most important day of the year. The investor presentation was only a few hours away, and the CEO was under immense pressure. The company's future depended on this one event. But the main system still wasn't ready. Engineers whispered in corners, nervous and pale. Everyone knew something had to be shown, but no one knew what. Ava arrived quietly, holding Echo in her arms. The small robot's round eyes blinked gently as if sensing the stress in the room. People stared as she walked through the hallway. Some whispered, "Is she serious?" Others smiled, half curious, half doubtful. Ava didn't stop. She went straight to the CEO's office. Richard Kavanaugh was pacing near the window, his phone buzzing nonstop. When he saw Ava, he frowned. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "We can't afford embarrassment in front of investors." Ava nodded. "Yes, sir. Echo works. It may not look fancy, but it understands people. Let's show them something real. The CEO hesitated, then sighed. All right, Patel. You get 10 minutes. If this fails, I'll have to take the blame. She nodded again. I understand. A few hours later, the presentation hall filled with people. Cameras were ready, screens were bright, and the investors were seated in the front row. Everyone expected to see another AI system like before, something complex and robotic. But when Ava stepped on the stage with a small, friendly-looking robot following behind, the room went silent. Richard introduced her. This is Ava Patel, one of our engineers. Today, she'll show a different kind of innovation. His voice was cautious. Ava stood in the center, hands trembling slightly, but her voice stayed calm. Good morning, everyone, she began. Most machines are designed to follow orders. But what if they could understand people instead? What if they could make workplaces safer, kinder, and more human? Some investors looked skeptical. One even whispered to another, "Is this a speech or a show?" Ava smiled gently and turned toward Echo. "Echo, say hello." The robot blinked, turned toward the audience, and said in a soft voice, "Hello, everyone. I'm here to make work safer and easier for you." A few people chuckled. One investor muttered, "Cute toy." But then Ava continued, "Let me show you something. Echo doesn't just respond to commands. It senses emotions." She turned to the CEO. "Sir, could you please talk to it?" Richard crossed his arms, pretending not to be nervous. "Echo, move that box," he said sharply. Echo rolled forward and picked up the box. Then, after a pause, it turned back and said, "You sound stressed, sir. Should I slow down?" The audience gasped. The robot had understood tone. Ava smiled slightly. It's trained to detect voice patterns and adjust behavior. It learns from human energy, not just instructions. She then walked closer and dropped a pen on the floor. "ECHO, what do you do when something unexpected happens?" The robot's sensors flickered, and it paused for a moment before responding. "Check if anyone is hurt first." It moved slowly toward her, scanning the floor area safely. Now the crowd's laughter stopped. People leaned forward. They saw something new, not just a machine, but a creation that responded like a friend. Ava explained, "I built ECO to help workers in stressful environments. It prevents accidents by understanding when humans are tired or scared. It doesn't replace people. It protects them." The investors began murmuring with interest. One man in a dark suit raised his hand. "Does it really learn over time?" "Yes," Ava said. "It studies reactions and improves itself every day. The longer it works with a person, the better it understands them. It's like a team member, not a tool." She then asked Echo another question. "Echo, what do you think of teamwork?" ECHO paused and replied, "Teamwork means listening before acting." The audience burst into light applause. Even the CEO looked impressed now. He had seen many presentations in his life, but none like this. This one felt human. By the end of the demo, every investor was smiling. One of them whispered to Richard, "This is revolutionary. If she leads this project, your company will change the world." When the presentation ended, the crowd gave Ava a standing ovation. She stood still for a moment, overwhelmed, before whispering, "Thank you." After everyone left, the CEO asked her to meet in his office. The atmosphere was different now. There was respect in his eyes, not doubt. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, Ava, I laughed at your work once. I thought you were wasting company time. But today, you made me believe again." Ava smiled softly. "It wasn't about proving anyone wrong, sir. I just wanted to make something that helps people." He nodded. "And you did? More than that, you reminded all of us what innovation really means." He paused, then said something she didn't expect. I want you to lead the new innovation division. We'll build your project on a global scale." Ava froze for a moment. "Sir, me? Lead it?" "Yes. You built Echo. You understand it better than anyone. You've earned this." Tears filled her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Thank you, sir. I'll do my best." Over the next months, everything changed. Under Ava's leadership, the company grew faster than ever. She gathered a team of young dreamers, people who had fresh ideas but were too shy to speak up before. She gave them a chance, just as she wished someone had given her one. ECHO was improved, and new versions were created for hospitals, schools, and factories. Workers reported fewer injuries. Students learned better with patient assistance. And even elderly people used ECO to remind them about their medicines and safety. It became a global success story. At one press conference, a reporter asked Ava, "What's your secret? How did you turn a small after-hours project into the company's biggest breakthrough?" She smiled and said, "I listened. Machines can follow commands, but people need understanding. Once we added that, everything changed." Months later, the CEO organized a celebration to honor her. The main hall was filled with employees, investors, and families. Richard took the stage and looked across the crowd. "Years ago," he said, "I laughed at a young engineer working alone at midnight. I thought she was wasting her time. Today, I see that she was building our future." He turned to Ava and added, "Sometimes the brightest light begins in the darkest corner of the lab." The crowd applauded loudly. Ava felt a warmth in her chest. She didn't crave fame or power, only the peace of knowing her work made a difference. After the event, she went back to the lab, where it had all started. The lights were dim again, and Eiko stood quietly on the table. She smiled and whispered, "We did it." The robot's lights blinked gently, and it responded, "We did it together." For a long moment, Ava just stood there, looking at her creation. She remembered every night she spent alone, every doubt she faced, and every laugh she ignored. Now all of it made sense. Those lonely nights had built something far greater than a robot. They had built trust, compassion, and hope. From that day on, Ava made it her mission to support others who dreamed differently. She encouraged young engineers to experiment, to fail, to try again. She reminded them that true innovation isn't about power or money. It's about improving lives. Years later, when people spoke about Cortex Dynamics, they didn't just talk about technology. They talked about a company that taught machines to care, and a woman who refused to give up on kindness. And in every corner of the world where Echo worked, its gentle voice carried Eva's dream, a reminder that sometimes the smallest act of understanding can change everything.